The series begins at Sinyong High School, a place known for being really special. The school is divided into two parts, the south side, where the sporty kids study, and the north side, where the smart kids are. But the kids from these two sides don't always get along because they see school differently. One day, a girl named Yuan Cai Xi, who was in the second grade on the north side, was told by her teacher to go to the south side. Cai Xi wasn't scared at all, but her friends were worried. They thought she might run into Li He, the leader of the south side. Li He was a little naughty and hard to control in class, but he was also an amazing runner and had won lots of races. When Cai Xi went to the athlete class to collect report cards, she found out that some students hadn't turned theirs in, and one of them was Li He. At the same time, Li He and his friends went to the broadcast room. Thinking Cai Xi had already left without noticing they didn't hand in their reports. While they were in the broadcast room, one of Li He's friends started talking about Cai Xi. She was like a star on the north side, and a lot of boys liked her. But she had turned down every love letter she got, so people thought she was a bit cold and didn't care much about romance. While Li He and his friends were talking, Cai Xi suddenly walked into the room looking for the missing reports. One of Li He's friends, who was feeling grumpy, stuck out a foot and tripped her. Cai Xi almost fell, but she accidentally hit the loudspeaker button on her way down. Thankfully, Li caught her just in time, and they ended up hugging for a moment. Cai Xi quickly pulled away, and they started teasing each other. What they didn't know was that the loudspeaker was on, and the entire school could hear their conversation. Things got awkward when Li He called Cai Xi the eternal second-place winner because she could never beat Ning Ze Yu, her super smart classmate who always came first in the northern school rankings. Cai Xi was really upset and stormed out of the room. After Cai Xi left, Li told his friend they shouldn't treat girls like that because it wasn't right. But soon, news about what happened in the broadcast room spread all over the school forum. Students from the north side made fun of Li He and his friends, which made him really mad. He decided he would settle things during the end of semester physical exam happening later that day. When the physical exam began, Li He and his friends tried to make things harder for the north side students during the warm-up. Cai Xi didn't like seeing her classmates treated like they were weak, so she challenged the south side to a ball-throwing competition. The athletes easily won, but things took a messy turn when one of Cai Xi's classmates cheated by spilling water on the field. This caused one of Li He's friends to slip, and soon, a big fight broke out between the two sides. The chaos got so bad that Li He, Cai Xi, and Ning Ze Yu, who were class representatives, were called to the principal's office. And Mr. Ma, the school principal, gave all three of them a strict warning to stop the fighting and work together to fix things. Sometime later, the school decided to do something new. They wanted the sporty students from the south and the smart students from the north to study together. The athletes would start learning some new subjects, and the brainy students would have extra gym classes. The school thought this would help everyone grow and learn more. But the brainy students didn't like the idea. They didn't want to be in the same class as the athletes. Cai Xi, the class leader, wasn't happy about it either. But her teacher, Luo Shiyin, explained that it was a good way to help students accept each other's differences. When the third semester started, Li He and his friends decided to show Cai Xi's class that they were not to be messed with, even if they were the smaller group. But their plan didn't work out. While they were working out, someone stole their clothes, so they had to walk around shirtless. This got them into trouble with Mr. Ma later. They found out that Ze Yu was behind the prank, and they wanted revenge. They thought Ze Yu would sit in Cai Xi's chair, so they ruined it, but instead, Cai Xi ended up sitting there. She had to cut her skirt to fix the mess, but Ze Yu kindly gave her a pair of pants. Li felt bad and apologized to Cai Xi. She told him to grow up and act more mature. Meanwhile, Li He and Ze Yu ignored each other, even though they were neighbors. When the classes were finally mixed, Li He was shocked at how the seating was arranged. Students with lower grades, mostly athletes, were placed in the front rows. Li thought this wasn't fair to the athletes, so he went to talk to Cai Xi, their class leader, to understand why. The PE teacher, Bai Fei, noticed the commotion and asked the brainy students to join the discussion. At the same time, the athlete spoke with Shiyin, who explained why the mixed class was important. Shiyin said it would help students learn new things and understand each other better. Bai Fei added that being physically fit could even help the academic students when applying for university. When they got back to class, Li sat behind Cai Xi because Shiyin told him to. The athletes were seated in the middle of the room, and she also asked Cai Xi to pay more attention to the athletes. After hearing their teacher, Li He and his friends decided to stop causing trouble. Li He even asked Cai Xi if they could make peace, but she said she wouldn't bother him as long as he didn't bother her. One day, there was a big problem in the classroom. The brainy students thought the athlete's shoes were making the room dirty, so they threw the shoes in the trash. When Li He found out, he was really upset. He asked the person who did it to take the shoes out of the trash, but the person refused, saying the old, worn-out shoes should just be thrown away. This made Li He even angrier, and he almost got into a fight. In the end, the person apologized, and Cai Xi promised to keep the athlete's shoes safe. But later, someone named Pan Hao took the shoes and threw them into a part of the school that was about to be torn down. Li He was furious and thought Cai Xi was responsible. Feeling bad, Cai Xi and Ze Yu went to look for the shoes. Luckily, they found them. Li He explained that the shoes were special because they held many memories. Yun Xiang's old, worn-out shoes, for example, were a gift from his grandma when he won his first race. There, Li He thanked Cai Xi for finding the shoes and apologized for misunderstanding her. Pan Hao also made up for his mistake by cleaning all the athlete's shoes. After school, Li He and his friends went to a restaurant to eat. While they were talking, they mentioned how kind and responsible Cai Xi was. But then, Li He accidentally saw Cai Xi with a boy who wore glasses, and it made him feel a little uncomfortable. The next day at school, Li couldn't stop thinking about the boy with glasses. He got even more restless when he heard that lots of girls liked him. Li started worrying that Cai Xi might get tricked, so he tried to warn her, hinting that she shouldn't trust people too quickly. Cai Xi was super confused by what Li said. Then, during PE class, something strange happened. Cai Xi got really mad at Li He and was about to scold him, but suddenly, she fainted. Li panicked and stayed with her in the treatment room. He gave her a warm drink and helped fix her bandage. Feeling guilty, he apologized for making her upset. While they were talking, he brought up the boy with glasses who was always around her. That's when Cai Xi explained that the boy wasn't her boyfriend, cause he was her younger brother, Yuan Cai Xi. Upon hearing that, Li felt so relieved and even a little happy when he found out. After that, it seemed like Li was starting to like Cai Xi. He kept asking her to make peace with him, but she didn't say much. Then one day, in front of the whole class, Li boldly asked for her phone number, which made Cai Xi blush. Later, Li was chatting with his friend Lin Chuan. He told Lin Chuan that he just wanted to be better friends with Cai Xi. But Lin Chuan could tell that Li was starting to like her. Lin Chuan decided to help by trying to learn more about Cai Xi through her close friend, Han Yi. Unfortunately, Yi didn't spill much information, so Lin Chuan didn't get very far. In chemistry class, their teacher, Xian, paired Li He and Cai Xi for a project. Cai Xi didn't want to refuse the teacher, but she tried to convince Li He to switch groups. When that didn't work, she finally admitted she was worried her grades might drop if they worked together. Li didn't give up and promised to study harder. Cai Xi saw how serious he was and decided to give him her phone number. Later that evening, while having dinner, Li got a text from Cai Xi. He was so happy that he became even more determined to study well. Meanwhile, Cai Xi was in her room, looking at an old photo of herself and a childhood friend. She remembered a scary time when they were trapped in a house fire, a memory that still haunted her. A few days later, some visitors from the education department came to check on the mixed-up class program. At the same time, Cai Xi's class was doing a chemistry experiment. But Li made a mistake, and it almost caused a fire in the lab. Everyone panicked and ran out, but Cai Xi couldn't move. She remembered her past trauma and froze, especially since she hurt her ankle and fell. Just then, Li rushed back to help her. He made sure she was safe before the teachers and education department visitors arrived to see what had happened. Afterward, in the treatment room, Cai Xi helped Li He with his injuries and thanked him for saving her. She opened up about her childhood, explaining how she had been trapped in a fire before and how what Li He did reminded her of her old friend. She apologized for always being negative toward him and asked if they could start fresh as real friends. After the lab fire, the visitors from the education department felt bad about what had happened. But they noticed something good too. The two groups of students, who used to argue all the time, were now looking out for each other. They believed the mixed-up class idea might actually work because of this. Later, Mr. Ma came to Cai Xi's class. He said he was disappointed about the fire but proud of how the students cared for each other. He reminded them to be careful and to stick together as a team. One day, Li noticed that Cai Xi's bruises were getting worse. He started helping her out by giving her medicine and even a discount card for her favorite bookstore. Cai Xi felt happy about his kindness, and her friend Yui noticed that she was smiling more often, even when there wasn't a clear reason. At the same time, Ze Yu saw that Li He and Cai Xi were getting closer, and it made him jealous. Ze Yu had liked Cai Xi for a long time, but he never told her. Every morning, he would wake up early and take a longer route to school, just so he could walk with her. But when Li started spending time with Cai Xi, Ze Yu began keeping his distance. He didn't have the courage to tell Cai Xi how he felt, thinking she only saw him as a friend and a rival in school. On the other hand, Li found it hard to concentrate on studying whenever he was with Cai Xi because he thought she was so pretty. Cai Xi felt the same way about Li He, but she always pushed herself to focus on her studies no matter how distracted she felt. One day, Huang Yuan accidentally threw away the discount card that Li He had lent to Cai Xi. Worried about losing it, Cai Xi dug through the trash to find it. Ze Yu saw her and decided to help because he knew how much the card meant to her, even though she could easily get a new one. A few days later, Ze Yu found the card and gave it back to her. Cai Xi was so happy and thanked him in class. Not long after, Sinyong High School held a big relay race between classes. A student named Zhang Yi challenged Li He to a race and made a funny bet. The loser had to wear a turtle costume and buy food for the winners. Li He accepted the challenge. After lots of practice, Bai Fei chose a few students for the relay team. At that time, Lin Xuan and Li He were on the team. But just before the race began, one of the girls on their team couldn't run, so Cai Xi had to take her place, even though her leg was still recovering. During the race, Cai Xi stumbled while passing the baton to Li He. He stopped to help her, but Cai Xi told him to keep running. Even though he tried his best, Li He lost the race to Zhang Yi. Surprisingly, Li He wasn't upset. Instead, he was happy because a photo of him and Cai Xi during the race started circulating in the class group. Everyone said they looked like a great pair, which made Li He smile. The next day, Li He kept his promise and wore a turtle costume to school. But to his surprise, his friends also showed up wearing turtle costumes to support him, so he didn't feel embarrassed at all. During the break, Cai Xi and her classmates helped Li He by buying food for Zhang Yi and his team, just like the bet said. Li He realized it was Cai Xi's idea and thanked her. Then, he invited her to have a meal together at a restaurant, making her smile. One day, Li He was feeling worried about his low exam scores. Even though his parents never pressured him, he wanted to make them proud. He and his friends came up with a plan to cheat on the exams, but Cai Xi found out and warned him not to do it. Li later told her why he was thinking about cheating, and she offered to help him study. Ze Yu also joined in to help. Li promised to meet Cai Xi at school for a study session, but he canceled at the last minute because he had plans with his friends. The next day, everyone found out that Li He and his friends had skipped school to watch a soccer match, leaving Cai Xi waiting for him. She was really angry and started avoiding him. Li didn't understand what he had done wrong and felt frustrated. That night, Cai Xi was still upset and talked to her little brother, Hao Shi, about it. Hao Shi guessed that maybe Cai Xi had feelings for Li He and got mad because he didn't take their promise seriously. Embarrassed by what Hao Shi said, Cai Xi kicked him out of her room. At school, Li tried to explain why he couldn't meet her. He said the school had set up a special training session with national running athletes, and he didn't want to miss it. He also didn't expect to be late for their study session. After hearing his explanation, Cai Xi understood and forgave him. Li promised her that he wouldn't break his promises again. As the exams got closer, Cai Xi and Ze Yu helped Li He and his friends study hard. Finally, the exam day arrived. Before the test, Zhang Yuan told Li He that he had the answer key from someone online. During the exams, Li He and his friends didn't have much trouble, thanks to all the studying they did. Afterward, Li He wanted to thank Cai Xi, so he took her to the playground. Cai Xi was excited but also nervous because she hadn't gone to the playground since her father passed away. It was a special moment as she tried all the rides for the first time and felt really happy. When the exam results came out, Li He and his friends were called to Mr. Ma's office. Mr. Ma didn't believe they could get good grades honestly. He showed them screenshots proving that Zhang Yuan got the answers from someone on social media. Zhang Yuan admitted he had received the answers, but explained that he deleted them after Cai Xi told him not to cheat. Despite this, Mr. Ma still doubted Li He and his friends, and Li felt disappointed by his teacher's lack of trust. Meanwhile, Cai Xi believed in Li He and his friends. She knew how hard they had studied and even shared screenshots as evidence to prove their innocence. But Pan Hao saw the evidence and spread rumors, making Li He and his friends outcasts at school. Li thought Cai Xi had shared the evidence on purpose, which hurt him. Things got worse when Mr. Ma spoke about the incident in front of the school, embarrassing Li He. Zhang Yi, who didn't like Li He, was thrilled to see him in trouble. At home, Cai Xi felt guilty because Li He wasn't replying to her messages. The next day, she decided to meet him in person. She told him that she trusted him and wanted to help him clear his name. Li He was touched and felt happy knowing that Cai Xi cared about him so much. Even though Ze Yu and Li He weren't getting along, Ze Yu believed that Li He and his friends were innocent. Secretly, he checked the screenshots Mr. Ma had and noticed something odd. He told Cai Xi about the person who sent the answers on purpose, and they decided to work together to find out who was behind it all. At that time, Ze Yu used the school computer to trace the person who sent the fake answer key. He recovered the deleted messages and discovered it was Zhang Yi who had anonymously sent the answers to Zhang Yuan. Cai Xi and Ze Yu quietly gave all the evidence to Mr. Ma. After discussing it with Mr. Bai Fei and Ms. Xiyin, Mr. Ma realized the mistake and apologized through a school announcement. Zhang Yi was punished for his actions. He admitted he had done it because he was jealous of Li He, who always seemed better at everything. When Li He went to Mr. Ma's office to talk to Zhang Yi, he told him to focus on improving himself instead of interfering in other people's lives. That evening, after hearing from Cai Xi how Ze Yu had helped him, Li He went to thank his neighbor. They started becoming friends. Ze Yu explained that he wanted to help because he didn't like seeing Cai Xi upset over Li He's problems. Meanwhile, Cai Xi began spending more time with Li He, but Ze Yu quietly watched their growing closeness from afar. Not long after, a new student named Yi Jing Shi joined Cai Xi's class. He was very handsome and seemed to have a crush on her. Jing Shi was also a famous celebrity who had decided to return to school, and many students admired him. When Jing Shi was alone with Cai Xi, he told her a big secret. He was her childhood friend who had saved her from a fire long ago. After the fire, Jing Shi moved abroad, changed his life, and eventually became a famous idol. Meanwhile, Li He and Ze Yu both started to realize they liked Cai Xi. Jing Shi's presence at school made them uneasy because they thought he might win her heart. So, they decided to team up, at least for a while, to keep Jing Shi away from her. When they returned to class, they warned Jing Shi not to hurt Cai Xi. Jing Shi noticed their reactions and guessed that they also liked her. One day, Jing Shi asked Cai Xi to help him with English because he wanted to audition for a movie role as a swimmer from another country. Cai Xi agreed to help him and even offered to tutor him in other school subjects. When Cai Xi invited Li He and Ze Yu to join their study session at school, they quickly agreed, so she wouldn't be alone with Jing Shi. The group started spending more time together, studying and having fun. This made them all closer. Jing Shi, who had felt lonely because of his busy life as an entertainer, was finally happy. He even skipped some of his work schedules to hang out with Cai Xi, Li He, and Ze Yu. Jing Shi's manager and sister, Ning Ze Yu, reminded him to stay focused on his goals. She told him that being an idol was his choice, and he needed to take responsibility for it, even if it meant missing out on parts of his youth. Ning Ze Yu was strict because she wanted Jing Shi to understand the importance of responsibility. After thinking about her advice, Jing Shi decided to focus more on his dream of being a musician. His agency also arranged for a music teacher to help him improve his skills. One night at Ze Yu's house, he had an argument with his mom, Wen Ting. She wanted him to become a lawyer, but Ze Yu secretly dreamed of being a programmer. He had been learning programming on his own, but things got tricky when the school asked students to pick their preferred universities. Ze Yu secretly chose the University of Technology, even though he knew his mom wouldn't approve. At the same time, Li He had big dreams of getting into Huaqing University. His teacher, Bai Fei, told him it would be really hard because his grades weren't great. But Li didn't give up. He decided to study even harder to achieve his goal of attending such a prestigious school. However, Lin Chuan wasn't happy with his decision. They had promised to go to a sports university together, and Lin Chuan thought Li He was choosing a different path because of Cai Xi. But Li He explained that Cai Xi had only encouraged him to aim for the best university he could. He also told Lin Chuan he understood why a sports university was important to him, cause it was close to his home, and he could help his mom with their family store. Li He encouraged Lin Chuan to try for Huaqing University too, saying it would make his mom proud. After that, Li He and his friends started studying together more often because they all wanted to get into great universities. One day, when Ting found Ze Yu's university preference form in his room, and she was upset. She threw away all his programming books and told him he couldn't do anything outside of school, including seeing his friends. Ze Yu felt really sad because his mom didn't understand his dreams. But instead of giving up, he became even more determined to join a programming competition to prove himself. Everything was going well for Ze Yu until one day, when Ting decided to transfer him to another school. Xian, Cai Xi, and others who knew about Ze Yu's programming talent wanted to help. They invited Wen Ting to watch a competition where he was participating. Wen Ting saw how talented Ze Yu was, but she still insisted he focus on his studies if he didn't want to change schools. After some time, the final exam scores were announced. Cai Xi, who had been working very hard, became the top student in the school, even beating Ze Yu. During the school break, Ze Yu secretly attended programming classes to prepare for another competition. Meanwhile, Li He and Cai Xi spent more time together. Jing Shi, who noticed this, didn't want to give up on Cai Xi. He told Li He that he planned to confess his feelings to her soon. One day, a fake photo of Jing Shi and Cai Xi started spreading, claiming they were living together. This caused a lot of trouble, and reporters even came to Cai Xi's house, almost revealing her identity. Luckily, Li He quickly took Cai Xi and her brother, Hao Shi, to his house to keep them safe. They later found out that someone had been stalking Jing Shi at school. With Ze Yu's help, they caught the stalker and made them delete the fake photos and apologize. This also helped Jing Shi avoid trouble with his agency. Meanwhile, Pan Hao, who had helped spread the fake photo, admitted everything to Jing Shi. He said he only did it for attention because he always felt ignored, even by his parents. Jing Shi forgave him, and Pan Hao decided to transfer to another school to start fresh after the incident. As the school holidays ended and the university entrance exams got closer, Li took Cai Xi to a quiet, romantic spot. He asked her if she would run alongside him and if he could stay by her side. Cai Xi blushed but didn't give him an answer. Later, Jing Shi held a party for his fans, and he made it extra special for Cai Xi because she had always supported him. He sang a heartfelt song, and Cai Xi realized that he had feelings for her. After the party, Jing Shi told Cai Xi that he was leaving to study at a music academy abroad. He even asked her to go with him, but she gently said no because her heart belonged to someone else. The next day, Jing Shi said goodbye to his friends and left for the music academy. On the other hand, Li He and Ze Yu had grown closer and were now good friends. On Li He's birthday, Ze Yu wished him a happy birthday for the first time. The next day, Li He invited Cai Xi to celebrate his birthday by going for a walk and joining him for sports practice at school. He thanked her for being part of his special day and invited her to watch his important competition that weekend, which could help him get a certificate for Huaqing University. Ze Yu saw how close they were and decided not to say anything, feeling a little uneasy. A few days later, it was the anniversary of Cai Xi's father's death. However, Cai Xi and her family decided to celebrate it as if it were his birthday to make the day feel happier. After the celebration, Hao Shi, who didn't remember much about their dad, asked Cai Xi to tell him more. She shared stories about their father, including his strength and courage during his battle with leukemia. One day, Hao Shi noticed bruises on Cai Xi's arms and got worried, thinking it might be leukemia like their father had. Cai Xi assured him that they were just normal bruises, but deep down, she was also worried because she often felt dizzy and weak. The next day, Cai Xi visited the school nurse, who told her to get a full checkup at the hospital. This made Cai Xi feel scared and unmotivated to study. Ze Yu noticed she wasn't acting like herself and encouraged her to talk to her family and get tested. Cai Xi didn't want to tell anyone, especially Li He, because she didn't want to distract him before his big competition. At that moment, Cai Xi started pulling away from her friends, and Li He noticed something was wrong. He asked her about it, but she said she wasn't ready to share and needed time. Although Li He felt hurt that she seemed to trust Ze Yu more, he decided to wait and trust her. Ze Yu stayed by Cai Xi's side, trying to support her until she felt ready to talk to her family. This made Li He misunderstand their closeness even more. After thinking it through, Cai Xi finally told her mom, Cui Yi, and how she about her health concerns. They were very worried, and Cui Yi quickly arranged for her to see a doctor. The doctor found some issues with her blood cells, but thought it might just be anemia. He said more tests were needed to confirm the diagnosis. Soon, news of Cai Xi's health reached her friends and classmates, and everyone became concerned for her. On the day of Li He's big competition, Ze Yu was busy with his programming contest. Before they parted ways, they wished each other good luck. Cai Xi wasn't sure if she should attend Li He's event because she had been distant lately and worried it might distract him. How she encouraged her to follow her heart. Cai Xi decided to go, but fainted on her way there. During Ze Yu's programming competition, he got a call from the hospital saying Cai Xi had been admitted. Since he was listed as her emergency contact, Ze Yu immediately left the competition to check on her, even though it meant he got disqualified. The organizers informed his guardian, Wen Ting, about what happened. At the same time, Li wasn't feeling well during his competition, which made it hard for him to perform his best. He ended up losing for the first time since starting high school. Feeling down, Li didn't know how to deal with the disappointment. Later, Ze Yu went to see Li He to cheer him up. He reminded Li He about their elementary school days, when Li He underestimated him because he wasn't a good runner. To prove himself, Ze Yu worked hard and eventually became the class champion. He told Li He that losing once didn't mean he should give up and that it would be a waste if he let all his hard work go to waste. Meanwhile, when Ting found out that Ze Yu had been secretly studying programming, she was upset because she thought it would affect his schoolwork. While Ze Yu's father was more understanding, when Ting insisted on transferring him to another school to keep him focused on academics. A week went by, and Li still hadn't returned to school. Cai Xi and her friends grew worried about him. During this time, Li spent time with his father, a former athlete. His father gave him advice, saying that both winning and losing are part of life and help you grow stronger. This talk helped Li regain his motivation to become a top runner. That night, Li met with Cai Xi to apologize for making her worry. He promised to work harder for his dreams and the university entrance exams. They also talked about why Cai Xi had been distant. Cai Xi finally opened up about her health concerns and the hospital tests. Li reassured her, telling her he would support her no matter what. He asked her to trust him and always share her feelings. One day, Ze Yu invited Cai Xi to hang out, and how she told her that Ze Yu had liked her for a long time. Cai Xi had always seen him as a friend and hadn't realized his feelings. How she encouraged her to figure out her own feelings and talk to Ze Yu honestly to avoid hurting him. At that time, Ze Yu and Cai Xi spent the day visiting fun places like a robot exhibition. Although Cai Xi enjoyed their time together, she often talked about Li He, which made Ze Yu realize that her feelings weren't romantic. Without directly discussing their relationship, Ze Yu installed a chat app he created on Cai Xi's phone as a way to stay connected. That night, Ze Yu's parents talked about his school transfer. Ze Yu didn't want to go, but his mother was firm in her decision, and he felt powerless to change her mind. Later, Cai Xi was thrilled when her medical test results showed she only had anemia. Around the same time, Li got great news too, that he was back in the competition finals after another participant withdrew. To celebrate, Li hosted a dinner party with his friends, but Ze Yu didn't show up and ignored everyone's messages. When Cai Xi contacted him through the chat app, Ze Yu told her he was transferring to a new school. Cai Xi didn't reply, which made Ze Yu feel left out and forgotten. The next day, when Ze Yu and his parents arrived at school, they were greeted by a surprise. All the students had gathered to give him a warm send-off, showing how much they didn't want him to leave. Xian, Cai Xi, and Li all spoke to Wen Ting, trying to convince her to let Ze Yu stay. Ze Yu also begged his mom, promising to focus on his studies and do well in the university entrance exams. His honest and heartfelt words touched Wen Ting, and she finally agreed to let him stay, asking him to always be truthful from now on. As the university entrance exams got closer, everyone studied hard. The day before the exams, Xian told the class how proud she was of their hard work and teamwork. She thanked them for supporting each other and wished them the best for their future. On the exam day, Cai Xi and her friends finished their tests with their families cheering them on. Afterward, Cai Xi came up with a fun plan to invite Li He somewhere. She gave him a tricky puzzle, and he couldn't figure it out on his own. Li had to ask Ze Yu and their friends for help to solve it. In the final scenes, Cai Xi waited for Li He in the broadcasting room, where it's a special place where they first met. When Li He arrived, he asked why she chose this room. Cai Xi explained that it held so many memories of their time in high school, including all the ups and downs they shared with their friends. As they talked, Li confessed his feelings for her again. This time, Cai Xi smiled and kissed him, showing that she felt the same way. The series ends. The moral lesson from this series is don't mix the smart kids with the sporty ones, or you'll end up with love confessions broadcasted to the whole school.